All right, so picture this. You're sitting down with the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, like one of the biggest names in AI right now.
Oh, yeah.
What would you want to ask him about the future?
That's a good question.
And that is exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay, love it.
We're taking a deep dive into some recent insights from the man himself.
All right.
And thankfully, we don't need to track down Pichai ourselves.
All right.
We've got a fantastic interview he did on a YouTube channel called Hale's World.
Okay, cool.
Have you heard of this channel?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so it's kind of becoming a really interesting hub for insightful conversations like this.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, you should. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, this is not some dry tech talk.
Okay, good.
Pichai really paints a picture of an AI-powered future that's going to touch like literally every aspect of our lives.
I mean, that's sort of the feeling you get, right? That AI is just going to be so pervasive.
Yeah, it's kind of like how we think about electricity today.
Yeah, you don't even think about it. It's just there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that is the kind of future that he's painting.
It's a bold statement, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from it at all. In
Uh-huh.
fact, he says AI will pretty much touch everything we do.
Wow.
That's a powerful thought, right?
Yeah, it is like everything, not just, some things or a few industries, but like everything.
Yeah.
It's a big claim.
So let's unpack that a little.
Yeah, let's do it.
Starting with what's happening like right now.
Okay.
Google's already rolling out its latest AI Gemini, and it's making waves.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if you're using a Pixel phone, for example, you might have noticed that the familiar Google Assistant has been replaced by Gemini.
Oh, really? I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, so it's essentially like a brain transplant. They're giving the assistant a massive upgrade in intelligence.
Okay, so it's still called Assistant, but the brains behind it are
Yeah.
Gemini.
It's like the next generation.
Okay, got it.
And this is clearly not just some, experimental project tucked away in a lab.
Right.
Pichai himself is using Gemini for everyday tasks.
Oh, wow.
He mentions in the interview that he's used it for things like brainstorming Mother's Day gift ideas,
Okay.
or even like quickly checking if a food is gluten-free.
Well, that's pretty handy.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
like he's got this AI assistant in his pocket.
And that brainstorming example, I think that's particularly interesting. Think about how AI could change the way we think about, like, creative tasks.
Yeah.
Like, instead of, staring at a blank page, you've got this AI partner that can just, like, instantly come up with a bunch of different ideas.
Right.
I mean, does that make us more creative, or does it just make us reliant on the AI?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
It's almost like AI is becoming this constant thought partner,
Yeah.
which honestly I think is both really exciting and a little bit intimidating at the same time.
I agree.
It's a lot to process, but
Yes.
Pichai seems to view it as like an enhancement, right?
Yeah, he does.
He highlights how people are already using Gemini for like all sorts of everyday needs, from planning trips to getting quick answers to complex questions.
Yeah, like it really seems to be becoming this super versatile tool.
Okay, so we're starting to see some of those like practical applications here.
Yeah.
But then the interview takes this really interesting turn into the philosophical.
Oh.
He starts talking about AI consciousness.
Oh.
And even Pichai admits it's a pretty mind-boggling concept.
I bet.
He makes this distinction between AI appearing conscious versus actually being conscious.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, right?
Yeah, how do you even wrap your head around that?
I know, and what's fascinating is that even Pichai, who is like at the forefront of all this technology,
Right.
finds it challenging to answer definitively.
Yeah.
Like, how do we even begin to define AI consciousness, let alone test for it? Like, what would be the benchmark?
Like, are there certain questions we could ask, or?
I don't know. I mean, we can barely grasp our own consciousness.
Right.
And now we're trying to figure out if machines are developing it too.
That's wild.
It's like a whole other level of complexity.
It really is. And, it's a question that philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Right.
But now it's becoming increasingly relevant in the real world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's not just theoretical anymore.
It's something that we may actually have to deal with pretty soon.
So what about those people who are maybe a little hesitant about this whole AI-powered future?
Yeah.
What if you're thinking, you know what, I'm good with things as they are?
Yeah, like, I don't need all this fancy AI stuff.
Does Pichai address that perspective at all?
He does, and he acknowledges that, people can express themselves in various ways, and they shouldn't feel pressured to adopt every new technology.
Okay.
But he makes this really interesting point. He says, understanding and utilizing AI is going to be a significant advantage in a world that's being reshaped by it.
So it's not necessarily about being forced to use AI?
No.
But rather recognizing that those who do engage with it might be better positioned to navigate this changing landscape.
Right. It's almost like he's saying you don't have to learn how to code.
Right.
But in today's world, it certainly opens up more opportunities.
Exactly.
So could the same be true for AI in the near future?
It's a thought-provoking idea, right?
It is, yeah.
On the one hand, there's this sense of, wow, this could be incredible.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's that natural hesitation
Right.
about what we might be giving up or becoming overly reliant on.
Totally. And that's something I think is worth exploring further. because while Pichai highlights those potential benefits,
Right.
we also need to think about the potential downside.
Okay. I am hooked.
Yeah,
Let's dive deeper into some of those potential pitfalls when we come back.
already.
We'll unpack more of Pichai's insights and really explore the complexities of this whole AI-driven future, so stay tuned.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about some of the potential downsides of this AI future.
Yeah, the flip side of all this excitement.
Right, exactly. It's easy to get caught up in all the, amazing possibilities.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to balance that with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Oh, absolutely. Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah, and one of the big ones that always comes up is jobs.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Is this technology going to, displace human workers?
It's a big question.
It's a legitimate concern, and Pichai does address this in the interview.
Okay.
He acknowledges that it's something we need to be mindful of.
Right.
But he seems to frame it more as like a shift in the types of jobs rather than a wholesale replacement.
So not like robots are going to take over everything.
Not necessarily, no. He emphasizes the importance of adapting and learning new skills.
So like upskilling, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily about competing against AI, but rather figuring out how to work alongside it.
Interesting.
So instead of fearing that, robots are going to take our jobs, maybe it's more about understanding how AI can make us better at our jobs.
Okay, so like using AI to augment our own capabilities.
Exactly, yeah. And there's some historical precedent for that, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Think about like computers in the workplace.
Right.
It didn't eliminate jobs entirely.
No.
It just changed the nature of work.
Yeah, good point. It's easy to get caught up in that fear of the unknown.
Right.
But history often shows us that, new technologies create new opportunities too.
Yeah, exactly. And Pichai seems to be betting on that happening with AI.
Okay.
He sees it as a tool that can free us from those like mundane tasks.
Right.
And allow us to focus on more, creative, strategic work.
Okay, that makes sense.
But, isn't there a risk that we become too reliant on AI?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, what if we're constantly relying on it to come up with ideas or make decisions?
Right.
Do we lose some of our own, like, critical thinking skills?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
It is. It really gets at the heart of this whole debate about AI and human agency.
Right.
Are we in danger of becoming, like, passive consumers?
Yeah, almost like the difference between having a GPS tell you exactly where to go
Okay.
versus using a map and figuring out your own route.
Right.
The GPS is convenient, but using a map forces you to think more actively.
You're paying more attention.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It highlights those potential trade-offs. AI can make our lives easier, more efficient.
For sure.
But it could also make us less engaged, less adaptable.
Yeah, so finding the right balance is key.
Finding that sweet spot.
Exactly. And that's where the whole conversation about AI ethics comes in.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about creating powerful AI, it's about creating AI that's good for humanity.
That's a good point, and Pichai talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of developing AI ethically responsibly.
Making sure it's used for good.
Right, and that's a responsibility that goes beyond just Google or any one company.
Oh, absolutely. It's a conversation that needs to involve everybody.
Policymakers, researchers, ethicists.
The public.
Yeah. Because ultimately AI is a tool.
It is.
And it's up to us to decide how we want to use it.
Right, like any powerful technology, there's potential for good and potential for harm.
Now, Pichai makes a really interesting comparison in the interview.
Okay.
He talks about AI being as impactful as electricity or fire.
Whoa.
Like, what do you think he means by that?
That's a good question. I think he's saying that AI is going to be as fundamental to our lives as those other technologies.
Wow.
Like, just as electricity changed how we power our homes and fire changed how we cook food, AI has the potential to change everything.
So it's not just a passing fad.
No.
It's a fundamental shift.
It's a total game changer.
And it's happening so quickly.
Yeah, the pace of change is incredible.
Pichai actually emphasizes that AM is evolving much faster than previous technologies.
Which is exciting, but also kind of scary.
It makes you wonder what the world's going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, if things are changing this fast now, who knows what's next?
It's mind-blowing.
It is, and it's impossible to predict with certainty.
Right.
But that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, so what does all this mean for us as individuals?
Right, like, how do we prepare for this crazy future?
Any advice?
I think Pichai's advice is spot on. Embrace lifelong learning.
Okay.
The specific tools and technologies we use today might be obsolete tomorrow.
Right.
But the ability to learn and adapt, That's what's going to be valuable.
So it's less about mastering any one particular AI program
Yeah.
and more about developing that mindset of continuous learning.
Curiosity and a willingness to experiment.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to try new things, dive into new AI tools, ask questions.
The more you explore, the better prepared you'll be.
That's great advice. And it really ties back to that idea of AI as a tool.
Right.
It's up to us to shape how it's used.
We have the power.
But Chai seems to believe that AI, like electricity or fire, will eventually just become so integrated into our lives.
Yeah, like we won't even think about it.
It'll just be there in the background.
Working its magic.
It's a powerful vision.
It is.
Both exciting and a little bit unsettling.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you wonder what the next big thing will be.
Right, if AI becomes as commonplace as electricity, what's next?
What's going to capture our imaginations?
What uncharted territory will you, dear listener, be drawn to?
What problems will you be inspired to solve?
That is a fantastic question to ponder, and as we conclude this deep dive into the mind of Google's CEO,
Right.
one thing is clear, the future is full of possibility. The AI revolution is here, and it's up to all of us to shape it wisely. Thanks for joining us on this journey. All right, we are back and ready to kind of wrap up our look at what this AI-powered future might look like, through the lens of Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to sort of dive into his perspective.
It really has. I mean, it's been a whirlwind, right? Everything from the practical applications of AI to these like mind-bending questions about, consciousness and ethics.
Really makes you think.
It does. And one thing that really struck me was Pichai's focus on AI solving like real-world problems.
Yeah, not just creating cool gadgets or, gimmicks.
Right. Like he seems genuinely driven by this idea of AI as like a force for good.
Oh, yeah, that definitely came through in the interview. And I think he used the example of self-driving cars,
Uh-huh.
something that could revolutionize transportation.
Totally make it safer, more accessible.
Imagine a world with way fewer car accidents and no traffic jams.
That would be amazing.
And he also mentioned healthcare, which is obviously a huge area
Yeah.
where AI could have a massive impact.
Like personalized medicine, faster diagnosis.
Things that could really change people's lives.
It's pretty inspiring, but I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but what does it mean for me?
Yeah, like how do I actually prepare for this AI future?
What advice would you give them based on what Pichai's saying?
Well, he actually addresses that directly.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and his message is pretty clear: embrace lifelong learning.
Okay.
Because the truth is, the specific AI tools we're using today might be outdated in a few years.
Right? It's moving so fast.
Exactly. But the ability to learn and adapt, that's what's really valuable.
So it's less about mastering, one particular AI program
Right.
and more about cultivating that mindset of like continuous learning and curiosity.
Totally. And don't be afraid to experiment,
Right.
Dive in, play around with new AI tools.
Ask questions, see how you can integrate them into your own life.
The more you explore, the better prepared you'll be.
That's really great advice, and I think it circles back to that idea of AI as a tool.
Yeah.
It's up to us to decide how we use it.
We have the power to shape its role in our lives.
And Pichai seems to think that AI, like electricity or fire, will eventually become so embedded in our lives that we won't even think about it anymore.
It'll just be there working in the background.
It's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It is both exciting and a little bit unnerving.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what the next big thing will be if AI becomes as commonplace as electricity.
Right. What will capture our imaginations and drive innovation, 10, 20 years down the line?
What uncharted territory will you, dear listener, be drawn to?
What problems will you be inspired to solve?
That's a fantastic question to leave everyone with as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI and the mind of Google's CEO.
Yeah, it's clear that the future is full of possibilities. This AI revolution is here.
And it's up to all of us to shape it wisely.
So thanks for joining us on this journey.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.